Hello there everyone, welcome to this video. Before we begin, I just want to say that as I got about halfway through editing this, they reverted a change that made what you're going to see here so powerful, so there's no real reason to copy what you're seeing. This is basically just for entertainment purpose at this point, where you can watch this video just to see what, why it was a good thing that they reverted the change. Basically, the sliders got changed back to how they were in 1.5. So I hope you still enjoyed the video. If you aren't interested in it due to, as I said, the reversion, feel free to click off. But I feel like it's important that I clarify this. The devs have actually listened to what the community said. They have reverted this changes to slider. Everything in 1.6 is still as it should be, but for this video, it's 1.6 before the change. As I said, sliders happened after I was done recording this, so I'm still going to upload it. But as I said, this is no longer how the game works. The sliders change has been reverted. It's back to how it was in 1.5. So with that out of the way, let's jump into this little bit of a time machine and show you just how quickly you could have won with Williams if you, if you were on the 1.6 slider system. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to this hopefully mini-series where we'll be kind of abusing patch 1.6, mainly the slider aspect. And we'll be trying to make a championship winning car here with Williams as quickly as possible. Kind of reminiscent of last year's, adventure, which is basically what it is because the sliders, in terms of behavior, have kind of reverted into what it was for 22. So we'll have a look at that and see how hard we can abuse these sliders to take advantage. I'll be explaining a little bit about how the sliders work as we go. But let's first go through the team we've chosen and why. We've chosen Williams here because I haven't played them yet. That is basically why. They do start with a pretty decent car. So it probably wasn't the best choice for this challenge, to be fair. But to make up for that, we're going to be keeping both our drivers. We are going to be keeping our staff. See if we can actually pull something out with these guys. Now, the car itself is pretty good. Don't get me wrong. It's ranked 9th, or basically 4th quickest in terms of the top speed and high speed cornering. It's ranked 6th here for low and medium speed, as well as DRS effectiveness. So the car isn't anything bad to start with. It's actually a bit surprising that it is ranked 7th overall. So we'll have to see if we can actually make up for that in our development here and make a car that is somewhat challenging. The goal here will be that in terms of development, we're not going to do anything for Bahrain. We just don't have time. As one might expect, but we do have the first ATR period coming up here in just 2 weeks, so we'll be doing something with that. And the goal here will be that by Baku here, 28th of April, we'll have a car that is somewhat competitive. So with that in mind, we are going to jump directly into it. And of course, the first thing that we want to do is do a little bit of development. So I'll explain a little bit about what I mean that the sliders have kind of reverted. Now, in 22, you could do some pretty interesting things with, say, the chassis as an example. If you maximize one stats and minimize the other two, you're gaining pretty high gain in airflow here. The airflow gain would be about, basically, if we kept everything in the middle here, let's say that we gained about 5% total. That's on average. Now, if we were to do this in 22, you'd basically get twice as much, meaning that we'd end up with let's say that we gain 10% total here. Instead of having those, we get more for one, but instead of having them spread around, they now get spread about on these stats. Let's say that 2% goes here, 2% goes here, 6% goes here. So not only can you maximize the stat gain into what you want to focus on, you can have a higher growth rate for those stats. When 23 first came out, it didn't have this. It had a balanced gain no matter how you place the sliders, which was actually a good balancing decision. But as it turns out, it seems like that wasn't how the game was supposed to work. So they might have, by accident, we'll see what Frontier has to say, actually have made a really good mechanic for balancing the current season. Now, sliders for research aren't as bad as they are for design, but in this case, as you can see, we gain a 25% increase in airflow, bringing attribute total up to 71%. We do lose some cooling here, of course, but again, it is very minor compared to, as you can see, the gain here. And in terms of the others here, if we turn down the lifespan, we can get a significant increase here just on the first iteration. But as I said, we're boosting this stat fairly high. So we're going to get additional ones on the next revision. Of course, earlier on with 23, if we did this, we would gain small gains across the board. But with the way that we're doing things now, with the sliders functioning, we can actually have a larger gain here and still have small gains for these two stats. So basically, the sliders have allowed you to get more out of your carb or out of your car designs than you could earlier, meaning that it has sped up your progress rather drastically because you, as the player, have a huge advantage in where you focus your stats. In this case, we focus them into medium and high speed cornering, and that alone is enough to for the high speed here to put us in charge of the grid as Williams. And of course, we're not going to get high speed cornering just from the chassis. We can get a decent amount of it from the sidepod here. I do still feel like the sidepod is best focused on engine cooling and airflow, and as you can see, we're getting another sizable chunk. We are losing some top speed, of course, but there's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, and we're more than making up for the loss of engine cooling from, you know, the chassis. We can even tune this down a little bit if we feel like it to get an even more competitive car, because again, 50% is decent. It's not great. Generally you want 60%, 70%, again, high as possible, but 50% here is more than enough for this first season of ours. So honestly, we could even go ahead and sacrifice engine cooling on this part too, lose about 6%, and still be fine. And as you can see, the gains are still pretty massive. And once again, we have now maximized the airflow middle as high as possible. We go engine cooling, we take a little bit from that airflow middle, but go somewhere else. We could also do something like this, get a little bit more into the medium speed cornering. We do sacrifice a bit more on the engine cooling there, a bit more on the top speed, because we're maximizing 2 stats instead of 1. So maximizing 1 stat is very, very valuable, because as you can see here, we barely lose anything in these 2, and we gain hugely in the rest. Now, the more interesting part about this is how this actually pertains to your CFD, because your CFD and internal time still works in the 23 mode, meaning that every unit is an extra day of expertise gain. Meaning that if we were to launch this project, in this case, like we are setting up now, again, we're basically still in the explanatory phase here on how things work. If we were to launch this project as it is now, we'd end up with 161 days worth of expertise gain. And that itself is pretty massive. But because it works daily, we can basically maximize these 3 stats here, do something like this. It gives us a decent chunk of cornering ability for everything. We lose a little bit of air tolerance, we lose a bit of top speed, but again, sacrifices are willing to be made, and this is a sacrifice that we are definitely willing to do. Now, we can actually do something even cheesier here, and we can rush this underfloor, meaning that, again, we have 161 days worth of experience from putting in the CFD, and if we rush this underfloor now, with how the new slider system works, we can basically put in 180 days worth of progress in 19 days. And since we have another CFD and wind tunnel, allocation coming in just 2 weeks, we can put that into the underfloor and make it even more interesting here. Because again, CFD wind tunnel doesn't actually affect this one. It affects the next iteration. Meaning that this is already a pretty sizable boost. As you can see here, pretty good. But that boost will grow even larger with the next underfloor. And rushing here is actually not a terrible idea when you're using CFD and wind tunnel time, because the main gain that you're going to be getting on that piece is actually that CFD and wind tunnel investment, and getting that early is definitely very, very viable. Now, I want you to remember in 22, if you did this, you'd basically have to wait about 60 days or so, I think it was, before you got this underfloor. We can get it in 19 days if you want to emergency manufacture it. We can get it in a little less than 3 weeks, which is, again, pretty insane. And that is also why we're saying sliders are broken. Well, I say we, but let's face it, it's quite a few of us, but at the same time, people are saying that, no, it doesn't. But there's a misunderstanding there, because people think that when we're saying sliders broken, it's putting everything to right. That got patched in 22. Like, everything to right stopped working in 22, wasn't as effective anymore. And here, turning everything to right, basically just means that you are, you know, going back to status quo, the same settings, so to speak. So it's not something we really want to do here. What we're speaking about is, as I said, minimizing 2 sliders, maximizing 1, or, you know, minimizing 2, maximizing 2, something like that. That is the idea. So with the explanation out of the mind here, but again, sorry, I kind of just skipped over a part here. I'm going to jump back. And that is why it's so potentially game-breaking in 23. It is the fact that we can develop an underfloor in just under 20 days and still get a huge gain from CFD and wind tunnel. We can do this for basically every part, and the maximizing of stats, although it too does have, you know, a daily gain, we have way more flexibility on how we want to do it. And if we were to run a chassis, for instance, 20 days, run 3 of them over 2 months, you can get some pretty sizable gains in the 0.015 or so category, 0.015 here, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's basically 7.5% gain in 2 months. If you pull that off for the entirety of the year, 7.5 times 6, about a 45% gain. You can very quickly reach the maximum cap for your expertise, which might sound a little bit silly, but it's not too far off the truth. This is an extreme example where you actually focus everything into just one stat. But if you were to do that, you can actually get close to, I'm saying cap, but what I really mean is about 70 to 80%, which is more than enough to completely destroy the AI. And that is the concern here. So the development of your car with the 1.6 patch is going to be highly accelerated compared to 1.5 and previously. And the goal of this series is just to show you how much more, you know, development has sped up. So let's just get into it here. First order of business is to make a underfloor. As you can see, we start in a fairly high setting here, about 50%. And we're just going to put in all of the CFD and wind tunnel hours, and we're going to rush this one. And I'm going to show you what I mean by you can make a pretty, you know, extreme underfloor fairly easily. We're going to maximize the cornering ability here because that is, for us, the most important thing. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to put 6 engineers on this. We're going to rush it, get it done as quickly as we can. And there we go. Project started. Secondly here, we are going to make a chassis, mainly because, as you saw, it was very, very good. But before that, we want to start a revving project, maybe, a suspension project, maybe, because, again, what we are going to be focusing this first development on is straight up going to be that first race in, as you know, good old Baku. So we're going to sacrifice a bit of speed here. We're going to sacrifice a little bit of high speed here. To maximize our low speed, we could, of course, also put in a little bit of medium, but it sacrifices a little bit more of the stats. We gain about 4% more medium because, again, well, 8% really. No, it's 4%, sorry. Because low percent here works like 0.01 is 1%. No, it's the kilonewtons. Yes, sorry, I'm completely out of line. So, yeah. Let me rephrase that. So we're losing a bunch of kilonewtons here, let's be honest. But this is a 34% gain for low speed. If we were to do this, this would be about 28%. So we gain 14, 12, 26% from doing it like this. But we want low speed cornering on the bench. We can modify it for medium speed later. And here's also the important part. This one acts as a multiplier on these 3. Well, this one and somewhat on this one. Basically airflow front works on low speed downforce. I think it has a little effect on the medium speed. I've been sitting with this for so long now that I am a little bit woozy, so I might be going a little bit back and forth. Apologies for that. But yeah, we want these two maximized, and we want the brake cooling here maximized as well, because you get more brake cooling from your suspension than you do your front wing. So we're going to get this one into the oven. And next up here is going to be said front wing, I think, because we're gonna need to get it done for Baku in 67 days. We're kind of going to be throwing away the first 3 races here. Those are not a priority for us, because we're going to be focusing on developing this car to be ready for, as I said, Baku and onwards. So we're going to make a front wing here that is going to sacrifice brake cooling, which is probably not what you'd expect, but the 3% that we lose here, we more than make up for in that suspension that we are making. Now, we could go ahead and, as you see here, make a somewhat balanced front wing, which is actually what we're going to do. We are going to need some medium speed. The main source of medium speed are going to be our front wing. And the second source, in this case, is going to be our side pods. And I'm just going to have you a little bit of show here, because the side pods, again, are going to be our main source of engine cooling. They're going to make up for what we lose in the chassis. We can actually tune this down to, it's basically, again, as said, about 50%. We're going to have a little bit of medium speed cornering here. We could, of course, do something like this. It's going to give us even more, as you see, cornering ability from everything. Basically make it very, very balanced, cornering on everything, which honestly wouldn't be a bad idea. We'd lose a ton of speed, though, but we're making that up with the rear wing again. So this isn't a horrible idea, but we'll get the parts made first, and then we'll check what we're actually lacking. So for now, the side pods are going to be a bit on the back burner. We are going to make a chassis and a front wing, I think, first, and then work from there. So maximize low speed. We don't really care for high speed on front wing. We're not going to care about the airflow sensitivity. We can catch up on that later. The airflow front is going to be vital here. Lifespan low, doesn't matter. The lifespan here gets tuned down to 1 to 2 races. They've actually nerfed this, which means that lifespan is a little bit more unviable, but honestly, it's still okay, I think. You might need to make up to 8 front wings, though, to make sure that you have, you know, a base to work with, and it's going to be even more important now to actually upgrade your factory, which we are going to be doing. Now, we could, of course, as I said, maximize this front wing for the low speed cornering. We're going to be sacrificing a bit of medium speed cornering to pull that off. So I think we're going to go with a 3-3 here, which isn't super great. We lose a ton of brake cooling, we lose a ton of dead air tolerance. But again, we're making more than making up for that brake cooling with our suspension. This is going to give us a, as you can see, a pretty sizable boost to our low speed cornering ability. So this is what we're going to be going for. Now, we are just going to run these other projects normally, mainly because, well, we lack engineers, but also because we do need to get expertise built up there. The chassis, however, is kind of different, as I said. We're going to just go airflow middle. That's the only thing we care about, getting that ton of extra high speed, ton of extra medium speed. And we're going to put that extra engineer that we have onto this chassis project, and we're going to actually rush this one as well. The reason why we want to rush this one is so that we can make sure that we get the... what we actually could do instead, because we have that underfloor. Now that underfloor project is going to run into another one right away. Yeah, we can do it like this. Basically, 20 days subtracted from this in terms of the rear wing. It's just about enough time that we make it if we run that second engineer on it. So it is going as planned. I just had to double check. We're going to do it like this. 19 days. We're going to rush it again, just so we can get the rear wing 2 done before Baku. Again, the stats here are pretty wild. A 0.1 gain in high-speed cornering alone is actually pretty, as I said, insane. These are going to be the first 4 projects. We're going to do another underfloor, which we boost with CFD, and we'll have a look at just how effective that is in just a second. But these 2 will be done in 19 days, which means that in theory, if we have a look at our calendar, we could get both of them, at least one version of them, made in time for Jeddah. So we could put a new chassis and a new underfloor on probably one of our cars. Nope. 3, 6. So unless we rush them, no chance. But we do have the possibility to rush one piece each, put on Alblink's car, for instance, a chassis and an underfloor, to just see how effective it is for Jeddah. Now, as I said, we are going to have those pieces for Australia for sure, but again, we aren't really going for points, so it's not actually something we need to focus too hard on. Now, what I am going to do, though, is because, as I said, they have changed how they've changed, in particular, how lifespan works. They've cut it down on some parts, increased it slightly on others. It wasn't anything about it in the patch notes, but keep in mind that the minimum lifespan now are going to require you to have a higher level factory just so you can keep up with parts, and potentially it's going to be a bit more expensive to run minimum lifespan parts. So we're just going to immediately upgrade the factory to level 3 and hope that that is enough, because we're kind of going to have to. We do have a little bit, financially it's not looking great, but we are getting 5 million a month. It's going to take over before the race. And I would assume we should get 2.5, 3 million per race, basically. I would think. We're getting about 2.2 with Alfa Romeo, unless I'm mistaken. So 2.7 to 3 million do sound about correct. Let's say 2.5 to be safe. So by the time we get into the next development cycle, we should already have about 10 or so million on book. So it's perfectly fine to do this once we have all the projects going. And as I said, the goal here will be to get 2 iterations of the underfloor done before Baku, maybe even 3, because again, it takes 19 days. If we rush the project, we can get 3 underfloors done before the 4th race, which would actually be kind of mad. The only concern with this, of course, is that we aren't going to be able to get side pods done, but that should be okay. So that is going to be the strategy here. I'm not going to be focusing too much on the races. The races are just going to be updates for the first 3, and we'll be focusing on development of car up until Baku, and we'll see where we're at once we hit said race. I just realized that I kind of skipped over the mailbox, so we'll go through this. A little bit of, team management before we just go to skipping the races. So we have been introduced to our key staff here at the team. Welcome to the 23 season. The testing results here are as we expect. Grab development, no big surprise there. Well, we should probably set them up on a development plan. So Albin here is pretty balanced. He has a little bit higher reactions, a little bit higher control, but generally he is good across the table except for smoothness and cornering. We'd love to put him on something that does both of those at the same time, but I think honestly we need to put him on short runs here. I'd love to get his smoothness up, but having, 2 stats that increase pace, 1 stat that increases, kind of reliability. I'm just going to call it reliability. There's a different word for it that is escaping me, but I think you guys understand. Rather than putting him on something that will give him smoothness, but again, not really anything else that we need. We do need that cornering ability, we need that braking ability, so if he gets braking up a little bit higher than he does his cornering, we might put him to long runs, but for now, we'll put him on pace. For Sergeant, he too has an issue with smoothness. He also has an issue with overtaking, which could, of course, lead to, more incidents, because overtaking lowers the chance of causing a racing incident. So we'll have to see how we want to develop him. Control, overtaking, smoothness are both some of his low stats. He also has low cornering. He has low braking. Basically, it needs a decent amount of development here. Let's put it like that. So we could put him on short runs here to begin with, just to get his pace up a little bit. We could also put him on race strategy. Wouldn't be the worst idea. Gets both overtaking and smoothness up, as well as reactions. But honestly, I think we're going to do the same here that we did with Albin. Put him on pace, just get him up to speed a little bit more, and then work from there. I think that is the best option we have. For the pit crew here, no big surprise should come from the fact that we are going to be working on the pit stop time. It is a no-brainer, really, let's be honest. I clicked the wrong day, that's why I'm confused. But yeah, we're going to be putting them on to, of course, gym training. That is going to be the main priority. Get those pit stop times down. And once they've gotten down, we can actually start working on errors. Of course, honestly, if you're not going for the extra money at the end of the season from winning the pit stop championship, I would honestly advise you to do pit stop drills. That isn't a bad idea. Now remember to make sure that you're safe on Sundays. We want to make sure that on Thursdays we are at 20% or below. Ideally, we'd like to be below, but for now this is okay. So the entire race we can say do seem to be okay, although the Australian one is kind of in danger. But this is acceptable. We cut down our pit stop time by about 2/10, almost. But we do add a bit of a chance of mistake. Most of it is from tired. But we're also, as you can see, not getting what we expected with that initial strategy. We do have some work ahead of us in terms of getting our pit crew attributes up. Now, with that in mind, we should also probably have a look at Smeets here, who is our chief of, sporting director. He actually has 90 in aptitude and processes, which is amazing, honestly. Training is nice, don't get me wrong, but aptitude is your cap. Processes is fatigue. So, while training is important, so is processes. It helps. And we're, of course, going to put him on industry standards and just keep on improving both of those. For the rest of the staff here, we're, of course, going to put this man onto underfloor and wings. Basically, front wing, which is the one downstream. Rear wing, sideboards, underfloor. That works, honestly. And for the aerodynamic side here, I believe he's actually the worst aerodynamic side in the game, unfortunately. We're going to put him on something that gives us, as you can see, downforce, downforce, downforce. Airflow sensitivity is a nice bonus. Airflow management could also be a bit of an interesting one, but we're going to do grip and traction. Ground effect wouldn't actually be a bad choice either, but we'll do this one. It's okay. For the race engineers, honestly, keeping them balanced is fine by me. They kind of need all these stats. Composure is very nice, though, so we might put them on a composure cure later, but for now this is okay. I am actually a tiny bit sidetracked here because this isn't actually what the video was going to be about, but as said, now we have the team set up. We're going to be quickly going through this first race at least, and then we'll get maybe for the next race a little bit of an upgrade for Albin, see how he performs. But let's jump into Bahrain, and I'll be back in a second and we'll see how it went. First race at Bahrain done. Not a bad result, 12th and 15th. We're not that far off a potential 10th place, as you can see. We're about 6 seconds behind Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg's about 2 seconds behind Ocon. So we're 8 seconds off fighting for, as you can see, Gasly and Ocon in 9th and 10th. The top 10 here is actually what you'd expect. Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin and Alpine. Although you probably expect Aston's ahead of Mercedes, but this is what happens sometimes. And in terms of qualifying, we qualified 13th and 15th. So both drivers in Q2. Means that we can be very, very happy already with where we're at. We did pick up a pit stop error though, but I don't think it really would have anything to say for starting the race. So in this case, it wasn't actually a problem. In terms of the money that we're making per race is 2.7 million. So as I said, 2.5 to 3 million, not too far off. We did get some from performance targets here. These are basically finishing 15th or above for one driver in terms of qualifying in the race. So we'll take that for sure. Now, as you can see, in 5 days, we're going to have both the design of the chassis and the underfloor complete. Then we're going to make some new parts from there. In terms of what we're losing from durability currently, it's about 13% for the gearbox per race, about 10% for the other two components, which of course isn't great, but it's something that we can deal with. So underfloor and chassis design are completed. We're just going to go ahead and manufacture these immediately, because if I don't, I'm probably going to forget. Now, we have our next race in 6 days in Jeddah. Even if we rush the chassis, we're not getting that in time. And in terms of making more chassis, it's probably going to be a little bit further down the line. But for now, we're just going to make 2. And the reason for that is incredibly simple. They take a long time to make. 10 days, we're going to have 20 days here. We are limited on the slots. And by back, we basically want to have printed a mostly entirely new car. So we're kind of limited on the slots there. For the underfloor, on the other hand, if we rush it, we can actually get it done for Jeddah. So we're going to waste 200,000 here on rushing and underfloor, and see if we can potentially snatch some points in Jeddah. Those 200,000 are probably going to be paid back in terms of, you know, race goals and incentives. So it shouldn't really be a concern, so to speak. Second thing that we're going to do, of course, is start new designs, more or less immediately here. And let us go ahead and have a look at what we wanted to do. We have already made an underfloor with pull CFD and wind tunnel hours, and we're going to go ahead and make another one immediately. We're going to put in CFD and wind tunnel again, and once again, we're actually going to rush this one. The reason why we're doing this is that by Baku, we are basically going to have 3 underfloors made, and as you can see here, this is a fairly sizable increase: 59, 95, 107, and this is going to help our car very much, just this alone. So we're going to go ahead, put 6 engineers on it. We're going to rush it. It's going to be done by March. And again, because we have, I think it's 67 days of race start to Baku, we'll be doing 19 times 3. to get the underflows done, and then we'll start using ATR for other things. But for now, we're going to rush another underfloor. And 59.95.07. Let's see how that stacks up versus our current one that we are actually, manufacturing. And it's a shame that you can't actually, but as you can see, it's already a very sizable upgrade. 107, what was it? 54, I think, and 70 something. So, well, 60 something, 70 something. I have bad memory. But already, the second edition is going to be a huge upgrade due to the CFD timing. And you can, kind of see why it's broken. Because again, if you maximize stats to one side, minimize to another, you get extra expertise. Then if you had everything balanced, you're going to get about twice as much. You can also focus that extra expertise into the parts that matter most for your lap time. So already, this underfloor is pretty good. This is 5th best in low speed, 9th best in medium. It's the best high speed underfloor. And by the time that we get the next iteration done, it's potentially going to be the best underfloor. And once we power through again, it's going to be a basically unrivaled underfloor. Now, using the second CFD period here on the underfloor is probably not necessary. It probably would have been better to put it into, say, your front wing, or your rear wing in this case, and that would actually have worked out just as well for us. Now, we are actually going to go ahead and make a rear wing here, and this rear wing is going to be focused on drag reduction and DRS delta. Drag reduction mainly just so we can make up for some of the, losses that we have for focusing on the stats. DRS effectiveness here is going to be make overtaking a lot easier. We're going to get slight amount of cornering, lose a little bit of dirty air tolerance, but again, this is all very much acceptable to us. Now, we are going to run this rear wing on normal. We could rush it, but honestly, we're rushing parts mainly just to get them out in time. Rushing your CFD and wind tunnel parts are also very, very okay because the gain from running them on intense or normal aren't that different. It's very, very minor to the point where rushing your CFD and wind tunnel projects aren't actually an issue. But we'll run this one normal. We'll be doing that for most projects now going forwards, except for the underfloor. So let's see here now. These are all the projects that we want to get done. Last one is 39 days out. And if we have a look at the calendar here, Baku is going to be in 41 days. That's when we get the weather forecast, which means that we basically still have about 55 days or so. 11th of March, it's the last weekend of April. So let's say 30 plus, 20, 50, 45 days. It's more than enough to get to underfloor, rear wings done. So we have plenty of time to get everything prepared for the Ford race in Baku. So yeah, that looks good. Let us continue. The new underfloor has been manufactured, and as you can see here, we are getting a pretty sizable boost. This alone is going to put us to, almost top of the field in terms of the high-speed cornering ability, which is kind of important here, but not really. It's the medium-speed one, that is. But we'll be putting this underfloor on, of course, Albin's car. We could make another one so that we have one for Sergeant, but honestly, once we get a full upgrade package, we're probably going to be upgrading Sergeant's car. We still need a little bit of money to go around. And if we have a look at the car analysis now, we are the second best team in high-speed corners. We're lacking a bit, and the rest day we're falling a little bit backwards, but once we get, again, another iteration of the underfloor, get that new chassis on, which is definitely going to put us into, the undisputed kings of high-speed corners, we'll have a little bit better, going for us there. I also did forget a different thing here because I got distracted, is that we did upgrade our helipad. We do want to upgrade it again. Again, getting the helipad up and running is probably one of the best things you can do for your money. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% boost might seem low, but if you can reliably do your objectives, it's gonna build up over time, and the helipad will pay itself off fairly quick. With that said, we are basically ready now to jump into Jeddah. I don't know why I froze there. And we're gonna go ahead and put one car in Q2 qualifying. We were 12 last time around. Do we want to gamble? Let's just be a little bit conservative and say 12. We'll still get a decent amount of money from that. So let's go into Jeddah and see if we can potentially pick up a point or two. We scored points at Jeddah, but it was a very, very weird race. We had 3 red flags. As you can see, Hulkenberg actually crashed out a couple laps before the finish, which kind of screwed us over because we did have kind of saved up the errors, saved up tires, so we could launch an attack on the Mercs, but because of the red flag 3 laps before the finish, couldn't really do that. Sergeant in 14 is still acceptable. Stroll did crash out, so one of the, point contenders did get out of it from there. But honestly here, we could probably have done a lot better if we had the opportunity. But unfortunately, couldn't really do that. Red Bull has a very, very healthy lead. No pit stops actually achieved, as you can see, which isn't that surprising, because we did have, as I said, a grand total of 3 red flags. We did, however, get all of our goals done, which you actually saw there. And we've actually had a factory fire. Factory shut down for 7 days. We'll not be able to do any manufacturing. We're just going to have to approve of this pause. It is a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Sometimes we just have a bit of a bad time. Now, we did use a lot more engine, in particular, during this race. So the heat did actually play a number on us here. Used a bit more gearbox as well. So if it continues like this, we're going to have to struggle throughout the rest of the season, so we might need to actually focus on getting those stats up. Now, the factory fire lasts 7 days, which isn't actually a problem, as I said, because we aren't actually getting things done here until at the earliest 10 days. Of course, it's going to slow down the chassis, meaning that we will not have it for Australia, most likely. We might have one, just about it. But we will not have it for both cars. Helipad has also been upgraded. We're going to go ahead and upgrade it once more because we do have a little bit of money in the bank, so it's not a big concern here to do that. Low stock of the underfloor is also not a concern. The factory fire has been solved, and we should have, as I said, just one of the chassis done by this time. So we're going to manufacture one of these underfloors, although let's be honest, it's not actually a point. The reason why we're manufacturing one of them is very, very simple. By manufacturing one, we are going to be able to put it on the other car, because if we have a look here at the calendar, 19 days from now, basically 2 weeks and some change, basically this Monday, we're not going to be able to get 2 underfloors out for Baku. So we're going to make one, which is going to go in car 2, and we're going to make basically 2 of them ready for Miami. We could, of course, rush the next set of underfloors, but I think we're just going to play it a little bit safe here. We're just going to manufacture one normally while we have time, and we're just going to have to deal with things like that. Now, in terms of development here, we are going to start, as I said, just straight up another underfloor immediately. We have to go quickly back to the warehouse here. We'll have a quick look at what we can expect from the current one. 107, 95, 60. Make it a little bit easier to remember. And if we go in here, have a bit of a look now. If we were to make another underfloor, this one without CFD time, and we put it exactly like the other sliders were, we'll end up with basically for car 2 here, which is the one that we are interested in because it doesn't have that new underfloor. We gain a 0.015 in high speed, which isn't that much, to be honest, but we gain almost 0.02 in medium. We gain a little bit of low speed. We also lessen a lot of the damage done to 30 and DRS effectiveness. So this one is not going to be a huge upgrade, let's be honest. But it's going to be an upgrade that, if put on the car 1 right now, it's going to actually have a pretty decent effect. It's going to make the high-speed cornering really, really good. So what we can do here, because we have such high-speed cornering performance on this one, is that we can actually sacrifice that high-speed cornering to gain a little bit of other stats if we really wanted to. In this case, we'd gain a little bit of speed, we'd gain a little bit amount of medium speed, but honestly, I think we'll just keep things as they are for now. That should be okay too, and maximize these 3. Now, we're once again going to rush this project so that we can get it done before Baku. We'll have about 10 days to, manufacture it, which isn't a lot of time, but it should get the job done to get us one, and basically have one max car by the time we reach Baku itself. We're also going to have the suspension done just after Melbourne, but we are going to continue to race weekend here. Helipad has been upgraded to level 3, going up pretty quick. I did forget to upgrade it for a little while, but again, that can happen if you get distracted like I did. We are going to put in some goals here. Qualifying position, reach Q3. Let's go for Albon, making it into Q3 here. I don't think we still have any parts to put on Sargent's car, so we're just going to do one car for now. We do want to go into the warehouse here. We do have that one chassis. That alone is going to bump us a little bit further off the grid. the underfloor. Don't really have an extra one, and no other parts have been made yet. So this is what we have for Australia. And it does put our car into a very firm position in terms of the high-speed cornering ability there. We are first by, I believe, a pretty decent margin. We can actually compare it to, I believe, Red Bull is the second best now in terms of high-speed cornering, and they are. We're the fourth best team in low and medium speed, and, well, our DRS and top speed is lacking. We'll have to deal with that later on. But if we compare the numbers here, you can see that we almost beat Red Bull in high-speed cornering by about 0.1, or 0.100 in this case. GS is basically actually 88. But at the same time, that is more than enough. It's very, very respectable. And again, we just put 2 parts in the car. We have another underfloor that's going to boost this and some of these other stats a little bit more. We are still decent amount behind in both the low speed and the medium speed cornering, but we're getting there. That's the thing. Particularly the suspension is going to give us a huge speed to low speed cornering. The front wing is going to give us a huge boost to both medium and low speed cornering. So we are getting there where our car is actually going to start becoming very competitive come Baku. Now we are going to go to Australia and we'll see exactly how we stack up there with the 2 upgrades on our car. Just want to give you all a quick update on how it's going so far. As you can see, Albon is currently running second behind Verstappen. We've basically been running a very aggressive strategy, which has helped us. We're still burning fuel because we're going to have rain around lap 30 something. We'll see. It's been moving a little bit back and forth, but as you can see, rain around lap 30, 31, 32. So we're going to do a 2-stopper, which is of course going to be bad for us, possibly good for Verstappen. But running attack here has actually allowed us to stay with him, and we actually qualified 5th for Albon. So with just 2 upgrades here now, we are already somewhat competitive. And in terms of pitting here now, as you can see, we are running... we need a little bit more time. Need to push for a few more laps here to get a little bit better window. As long as we can come out ahead of, say, Russell, that would actually be straight up amazing. And we do have the best toe in the game, Verstappen, to try and help us get there. We still have about 4 laps or so before we do want to pit. Current lap times, we're running about a second or so quicker than, well, 1.5 seconds quicker than the cars that we want to, you know, get out ahead of. And that should work out really, really well for us. We'll have to see exactly where we end up, though, because as I said, we are planning to do a 2-stopper here. And you can probably hear in the background the trumpet, so to speak. Apologies for that if the microphone's picking it up, but there is a ship outside that's decided to blare its horn. We're also going to be pushing fuel a little bit more. We're going to be playing this one very aggressively, and we'll see where we actually end up at the end. We do have this first pit stop, and then we have the wet pit stop, so looking to be an interesting potential race here. We have done fairly well here. We did pit. The only one that hasn't pitted here is, as you can see, Leclerc. These tyres, though, are getting into the danger zone, but it's going to start really, you know, peeling down in terms of rain in just a couple of minutes. We'll have to see if we might actually go ahead and pit this lap, because at this moment right here now, it is a maximum of 1 minute until it starts to get really, really wet on track. So, to be fair though, we've done most of the track here. Track times is, I think, 1:23 right now, so 20 seconds pit stops. We don't have a lot of track left. I think this is the moment where we try and get both cars in and get them on the wets, maybe a tad early. We are going to tune down the tire usage before we pit, just to be on the safe side, or rather than tuning down tire usage. What we are going to be tuning down here is going to be tire aggression, but we'll do that by manually tuning it down once we actually get into the pit box. So we'll allow the pit stop to happen first, and then we'll make a move from there. Because as I said, it's going to start raining pretty hard pretty soon here. We have maximum of 30 seconds until this happens. So by the time Albon leaves the pit here, we should be seeing a lot more rain. Let me put it like that. So Sargent should be coming out in the perfect sweet spot. He hasn't had any luck. He also doesn't have any, better parts. So that is also nerfing him a bit. No pit stop errors, we'll take those. And 10 seconds now until we get proper rain. So we'll probably have to, as I said, just run the game a little bit slower here so that we can tune down the aggressiveness once we actually get up to heat.
You can afford to drop
we'll just tune them down immediately to a bit more conservative.
Okay, happy to manage tires
so that we don't immediately use all of it. Immediately use all of it up. And we'll have to see if Albin can actually jump anyone. Tune up to standard now. Water is going up. Go a little bit more aggressive on it. And we have the other cars in the pit lane. We might have jumped this a little bit too early. We'll see. And Albin now, where does he come out? He comes out behind the Sabin in 4. So it's not like we really lost anything here, to be honest, in terms of pitting early. It's probably going to turn out to be the best thing we could have done in this current situation. Now, the heat for these is actually capped out at 95 degrees, so we are going to have to tune them down to light, just so that we don't burn them completely up now, because we aren't in full wet weather yet. It's going to have to reach 4 millimeters before we're there. So we do want to, as I said, keep these tires alive as much as possible until we reach that window, and we might have a bit of an sprint there towards the end. So keeping these tires alive is a priority. And we're getting very close now to the window. We're going to tune them back up. As you can see, heat is still going down for both cars. So I'm pretty sure we can run them on aggressive, no problem. We're going to go ahead and tune them up to that. And for Sergeant here, as you can see, we did lose a lot of tire because we pitted hand earlier. And we do have a bit of a deficit towards everyone else. So we could actually have waited with pitting for one more lap since we went on the wets. If this was an inter jump, probably would have paid up a lot better for us, but unfortunately it wasn't, so it didn't actually work out. As you can see, the tire temperatures have stabilized around 85 degrees. So since 95 is when we start to see real big drops, we are going to be pushing these on attack, basically from here till the end, and we'll see if we can maybe snatch a podium by the end of this race. Alright, we ended up 5th here because I opted for another pit stop for inters. We are 3 seconds behind Science, but there was a virtual safety car involved here. And we can actually have a quick look here in terms of lap history for Albin. As you can see, we had the last 3 laps under the virtual safety car, which cost us massively. We were doing 125s after we had pitted, gaining about 3 seconds compared to our previous lap times. But compared to Science here, we basically were catching him pretty rapidly, as the track was also drying. So his lap times would only have gotten slower, our lap times would only have gotten quicker. I was a little bit worried that we wouldn't be able to hold him off, which is why we jumped on the inters, but the safety car from Hamilton's crash, or the virtual safety car that is, did kind of put us into a position where we couldn't really do much. Sargent got a very respectable 14th place. Again, Hamilton was the cause of the accident there, but us getting 5th with just 2 upgrades is still a massive, a massive benefit. Leclerc also wins, which makes catching Verstappen a little bit easier for the long run, and as you can see, Sergeant did eat that penalty for us, making our life a little bit easier. Now, we have the huge gap before we get, as you can see, we also get a decent amount of payout, because as we did take a 3 race in the top 15 thing. But now we have a pretty extensive amount of development ahead of us. We're going into Baku. We'll have to see exactly how many pieces we are able to manufacture, because all the manufacturing slots are currently in use. And if we have a look at what is going to be happening, in 3 days we're going to get front wings. They're quick to manufacture. There's not actually a big problem. If we can't get them done, we'll just replace this one that's damaged. So I think we are going to be manufacturing 2 suspensions. We could, of course, rush these. But again, that cornering ability is going to be key around Baku. The brake cooling is going to help out a ton too. So let's get that in manufacturing. 4 days for both of these to be done. Chassis and the underfloor for, our friend, which should be okay. We also have some monthly updates here. 3 points in cornering for Sergeant. We'll take that. A point in braking and accuracy for Albin. And a couple of points saved for our reserve. So suspension design complete. We did get that one. The car, we'll have a look at this once we actually get to Baku to get a realistic results. We also have to set up our pit crew training. But before that, we're going to start designing a new piece. And just to show you, that the suspension that we just made, if we have a look at the stats that we maximized versus the stats that we lost, we're gaining another 0.010 Gs here in low speed, and we're gaining close to, well, at least a few percentages here in extra brake cooling if we were to make just another one right away, which we actually are, because, well, brake cooling is important, and this is probably the best source of it. The only other thing that we are going to do, though, first, before we make another suspension, which we'll do later, is actually get the project for the side pods done, because we haven't actually made that yet. And again, side pods are going to be our main source of engine cooling. It's going to be it's basically a choice here. Do we want medium speed? Do we want high speed cornering ability on this one? We could do this, which balances it, but it does also cost us a lot of top speed. It does cost us some engine cooling, and this is our main source of it. So we're just going to sacrifice the low speed one completely, get a bunch more engine cooling, get some high speed, medium speed, a little bit of low speed, and of course lose a decent amount of top speed, but this is what we'll do. We can rush these projects if we really want to, but I don't see a need right now. And as I said, we'll be doing a bit more balance this month, because again, getting pissed off times down is one thing. But we're getting to the point now where we're actually fighting for points. And once we actually are fighting for points, those pit stop errors are going to become very, very, negative very quick. So we'll set up something that is somewhat a middle ground between just, pit stop errors and other things. So we'll do this one to rest just to be safe here. There is a sprint race involved here. And pit stop drills, we can switch them all to balanced. But if you really want to lower the chance of a mistake, we might want to do wheel gun. And the reason for this is actually incredibly simple. Wheel gun is the best option to focus on if you just want to lower your chance of error, because most errors have wheel gun involved. So we'll put the focus here on the wheel gun. Again, just the most efficient way of getting it. We're losing close to 10-2 in terms of the pit stop, timer lowering, but that works in our advantage. Just going to double check that we have 4 projects running, that we have all the manufactured projects going, and we do. So we'll have this design done now, the new front wing. And if we have a look at what we're actually getting from said front wing, let's just have a quick look here. It's giving us about 55 and 42 for the stats that we care. If we were to say remake it right now, with the same basic kind of setup here, like so, let's see if we get more than we did on the previous one. And we do. We get a fairly significant increase, while we also lower the losses that we had from the other 2 stats here. So we could do this, just make another front wing immediately, but as I said, we do need a little bit more brake cooling, and the main way that we're going to be able to get that, particularly now that we're making a front wing that is even more kind of harmful to the brake cooling itself, is of course by suspension. So we're going to go ahead and make another one of these. It's not going to be a huge boost, let's be honest, but mainly the thing we're looking for is the brake cooling. Although, to be fair, we could boost the front wing in the same manner. But I think we're going to do suspension, and then we're going to put our next CFD period into the front wing instead. And that is going to make somewhat up for it, is the idea. Front wing, we can't manufacture it yet. We're going to have to wait for the chassis and the underfloor to be finished, and then we can go ahead and manufacture probably 4 front wings. I think it should be our minimum here. But if we have a look at the current projects and when they're done, let us have a quick look. 12 days, 11 days, so we are going to need a couple of slots here. 12 days matches perfectly with the rear wing, so let's go ahead and put the front wing in for, again, 12 days. Normal, 4 of them should be good. We're also going to go ahead here and make another chassis so that we have one in reserve, so that we don't waste potential manufacturing time. And that should be perfectly okay. Helipad is now level 4. We're just going to go ahead and maximize it. We do have plenty of money. And we have a regulation change here to low speed wing changes or high speed wing changes. Honestly, high speed is probably easier to recover from. We don't actually care much for these on our rear wing anyways, so we'll have to see. We might put our safety time in somewhere else, but generally we'd want high speed wing changes just for our sake, but also for the AI's sake. High speed has less of an impact on front and rear wing, respectively. We do lose a little bit of DRS delta, but focusing high speed will have less of an impact on the AI, rather than focusing low speed. It'll also have a minor impact on us, but honestly, we have a much better chance of, alleviating that. We are going to deny these extra obligations. I don't feel they're worth it, even if they, don't really do anything. Chassis manufacturing is complete, which is very good. Research period has begun. And we did get the high-speed wing changes that we wanted, so that is actually pretty good. Now, we are getting 2 of more projects here done in a day, and we are going to get them done for Baku. Underfloor design has completed, so we're just going to go ahead here and manufacture a couple of underfloors. Again, even if we were to say rush these, it won't matter. It actually will matter. We could get 2 of them done for the race itself. So let's go ahead and rush these. It's probably not the best idea, but it will give us the best chance for both cars to potentially score points here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We do also need to start, of course, a new design project. If we were to say make another underfloor at this point, we probably will not be seeing any big gains. We can't really compare it. Car 2. Give me a sec. There we are. So car 2, 122, 70, 15, 22. Let us see here what we would be seeing now. 70, 15, and 22. Are we going to have bigger gains than that? And would it be worth it making another one? And car 2. So 70, 15, 22. Not really at this stage because we haven't put any CFD time into it. And we rushed the project. We gained very little expertise. But as you can see, the main boost that we're getting by using CFD and wind tunnel time is that that expertise gain is gained immediately, meaning rushed is a very, very viable strategy for getting good pieces out early. This also means that we're basically done with this underfloor. The only thing that we might want to do here is make one that is, say, focused like this. Purely to, not for usage, let's be honest, but to gain a little bit of boost in these 2 stats. It's a way of doing it, but we do have research now, so it's not actually the best option. If we were to go into research instead and have a look, let's say that we want to boost, as I said, those 2 stats. Research is a little bit more, you know, kinder though. It's going to be less effective in this case. But we could do that if we really wanted to. Instead, what we're going to do here is go ahead and check the calendar. When is our next CFD time? CFD period. It starts right here in May. So just a couple of weeks away, meaning that we don't really want to start another, another farming project right now, which means that we only allow left to do a chassis project. Now, I'm not going to be using this chassis most likely, so we could do, an improvement of the engine cooling. But I think what we're going to do here is actually something like this. It'll be a small improvement on chassis that we have currently. So we're going to add a little bit of engine cooling boost in there too. And then we'll make another one later on. This is basically just boosting our chassis a little bit. We'll not be putting extra engineers on this because right now it's no point. We have basically got the piece that we need to kind of dominate, which is kind of weird to say at this point. Rear wing design has completed. We have the manufacture of suspension and front wing done, which means that we are going to immediately manufacture a let's see here, what are we actually lacking right now? The rear wings, of course. We are want to make 3 of those. And I think what we're actually going to make here is a suspension, just a backup suspension, so that we have 3 of them. That shouldn't be a bad choice. Now, the other design project we want to do is, in this case, going to be another one for the rear wing. We're once again just going to focus on everything with a little bit of boost here on the dirty air sensitivity. That's going to be helpful in the long run, which is the idea here. We're just going to do it normally again. That should be okay. So with that said, we do now have every part in manufacturing. We have everything ready. And Baku here should potentially be the first time our car gets a proper opportunity to shine. Helipad has also been maximized, which is good. So we will have a quick look here now. Suspension manufactured, underfloor manufactured, rear wing manufactured. Just how good this car is compared to our opponents. So let's go ahead and have a look at what we can put together. The chassis has now been installed on both cars. Front wing has now been installed on both cars. Rear wing has been installed on both cars. We don't have a side pod yet. The underfloor has been installed on both cars. And the suspension has also been installed on both cars. Now, if we have a look at where our car now is currently placed in terms of, development-wise compared to, say, Red Bull, let's have a quick look at that before we continue. So we're currently beating the Red Bull handily in the low speed. We're very close to them in the medium speed. We're lacking 0.010. And we have them still fairly, you know, fairly beat in the high speed. We're lacking dirty air tolerance, I will not lie. That is a fact. We're lacking top speed. But we now have a rather competitive car. And in terms of the grid here, we have the best DRS, we have the best low speed and high speed cornering. We are very close to having the best medium speed cornering as well. And this is just before we get into the fourth race of the season. We're going to have the side pods by Miami, I believe. And that's going to put us even more into a position where, you know, we're going to be even more powerful. But what I want to do here, just to show you just how much we have grown, is that we're going to be putting the stock parts back on car 2. And we're just going to compare the two to just show you why development in this, well, 1.6 might be a tad broken, and why I don't want to use play my saves until they revert to change. It's actually pretty straightforward and, you know, understandable. The thing is, you can't really do, you're kind of limited on what you can do in terms of development. If you don't want to take advantage of this, basically. And that's why we don't really want to do it. So this is our car now versus our car at the start of the season. As you can see, we've had some pretty significant leaps in low speed, basically 0.200. Significant leaps in medium speed, almost 0.200. Actually more than 0.200, 0.217. And same here for high speed, very high leap as well. We sacrificed 10% of the dirty air tolerance to achieve this. We've sacrificed a little bit of engine cooling. We have gained a bit of brake cooling. But we have generally made the car quicker. And here's the rub. We're still lacking one thing, and that is that side pod. So once we get that side pod, we're probably going to be very, very, you know, in a very good position to challenge people. It'll take 10 days to get that side pod made. So we will not be getting it for Miami. We'll have it for Imola. So with that in mind, let's see how we can do here at Baku. And potentially here, I'd say the car that we now have is one that could potentially fight for wins. Particularly when we do aggressive strategies, Baku is actually great for this. The only concern I have is that we might be a little bit hung up behind other cars due to the dirty air cornering. The Red Bull having a little bit of a top speed advantage here at Baku. But honestly, I think we're looking to be a very, very strong contender to the point where I'm saying we're going to have one car top 4 for the next 4 races. Fastest lap, we'll go for that too. Qualifying position, one car top 4, and one car in Q3. Although, to be fair, I think Sargent can, with the car that he's been given, make it into Q3 as well. Because keep in mind that the car that we currently have, it was ranked 7th. Alpine, which should be our closest rival, we have basically overshadowed them by over 100, well, 0.100 in all 3 of these. 200 for this one, 120 basically for this one, 120 basically for this one as well. We have sacrificed, as I said, the dirty air tolerance. We need to get that up with... that's basically what we need to do for the rest of the season, get this up. But we have them so handily beat in most other aspects that it's not actually a problem at this stage. Ferrari, for instance, they have a speed in top speed, acceleration. This one we can't really do much with because it's mainly engine based. But we have them beating cornering. They have a speed in these 3 stats here, which aren't as important. The most important stats here are going to be your cornering, then probably your DRS, then your top speed, and then your dirty air. Cooling is mainly just for tire cooling, which decides how aggressive you can be and how quickly your parts wear out. So there is some things to take into consideration with this. But as I said, I think our car now is fairly dominant. We're ahead of Aston Martin, as you can see too. The dirty air tolerance could be a problem, but we can fix that. And if we have a look at, say, Mercedes, we also have them handily beat here. So the car now is very, very dominant, honestly. And again, we're still missing an upgrade. And once we get another CFD period, and say put it into the front wing, which is basically what I'm planning to do. Once we put that CFD period into the front wing, we might actually focus a little bit into, you know, dirty air there as well. Because that is what we're lacking right now. We're lacking dirty air, we're lacking cooling. So we might do a CFD period where we alleviate those two concerns. And that will make our car even more of a power tool, if you will. But for now, we'll jump into Baku and we'll see if we can seize a win. Let's time the quality slightly, which meant that 5th and 10th is what we get here, which is a bit unfortunate, but well, it's not the worst thing ever. We still had a pretty good result here. We'll just have to deal with this and going forwards. But 5th and 10th is still acceptable. We still start fairly good here for the sprint. We still have options to get overtakes done. And we have been looking kind of rapid. Now, in terms of the circuit here, compound performance, we are looking at about 4/10 difference between soft to medium. Degradation is 3/10 though, 300, sorry, so quicker for about 13-14 laps. Medium to hard, it's again about 4/10, 200 degradation, so about 20 laps advantage. We want to try and stay away here from the hards if we can while running full attack, but we'll have to see. We do have a practice session now where we can, say, jiggle the front wing. That's about it. Not the best setup for these boys because of that, but for Albin here, he actually came out good. It's a little bit unfortunate, but for Sergeant, we'll just have to deal with that. Now, we are getting to the point also where our, say, gearboxes in particular are getting close to needing a bit of a change. So we might change out the gearbox for this race. If we want to be really cheeky, we'd probably change out the engine as well. But that kind of defeats from the point here. We're trying to beat the AI through the power of the car. Gearbox here should be fine for the sprint. Honestly, everything here should be fine for the sprint. Everything here should be fine for the sprint, so we're not going to actually alleviate anything. In terms of the strategy that we want to choose, it's going to depend on what is quickest. So the soft strategy is like so. Medium strategy is like so. Soft is about a second quicker. We do also have still a lot to go on in terms of the tire there, in theory. So it is also Baku, keep that in mind. So for this sprint, we're just going to go full attack on the softs till the end. And that does seem to be the best strategy. Again, it's Baku. Someone is going to crash, either during the sprint or the race. And we want to, if we can, be there to take advantage of it. So luckily, moving the front wing here did give us a bit of a higher satisfaction, just slightly. But it did, you know, we kind of peaked it then the right way. We're going to go full attack from the get-go, and we'll see if we can make up some positions here during the sprint and during the race itself.
Here in Baku. And it's lights out, and away we go.
I'm going to turn on battle assist because I am just lazy. I prefer to have it on. And as you see that we're already kind of getting attacked there with Albin getting overtaken by Alonso. So still not all bad. We can still make something out of it. Sergeant is finding with Ocon. This AI is very aggressive during the first 2 laps there. Falling back a position or 2 ain't the end of the world. We can definitely make a comeback from this position. And Albin hasn't given up yet, as you can see. He's still being kind of aggressive there with Alonso. We're going to speed things up a little bit here and see where we get to. Alonso is also falling backwards, as you can see. So by the time we get DRS, we should just fly by him. The only thing that is a bit of a concern in that regard is, can we catch up to the Red Bulls and the Ferraris up ahead? Honestly, I think it won't be too much of a problem, but as one might think here, we might get a little bit of problems, particularly because we have lower confidence for both our drivers, so we do have to manage that as well. Energy is also a bit of a concern here in Baku, so we do have a little bit ahead of us in terms of that, but as I said, it should be perfectly fine here now. We have DRS. We should just, well, if not fly by on this one, we'll probably fly by on the next one. We're down about half a kilogram, which is a little bit more than we wanted to, but we'll tune down the fuel usage here. Again, just making up a place, catching up to the Ferraris would be more than enough for us here to really say that this is somewhat a success. There's a tie here too. We're not even close to the maximum. As you can see, the maximum is 120 degrees. Now we are going to give Albino here a bit of energy usage to not only get away from Alonso, which is going to be the main goal, but to also catch up to the cars in front. Now the cars in front here are actually slow enough that it's going to be easier for Alonso to follow us. That is a bit of a concern because he has high top speed. He will potentially just overtake us on the straight here, but we'll see what we can do. Sergeant on his side has made a place up against Stroll. and he'll be starting to hunt down the mercs. Now, we should be seeing that Albin will be gaining in the, corner section here. Provided, of course, that we don't get severely held up by Alonso, which seems to be the case right now. Stroll retakes over Sargent. But, yeah, as long as we can get within DRS of Perez and Sainz, we should be able to catch up. And if we can catch up, we can launch an attack. So, everything is still looking very, very good here in terms of getting a race win. Again, it's the race that we're planning to win, not the sprint. The sprint is a little bit harder to pull off victory, even if you have a car that is good. We are lacking that little bit of, following behind the other car power, if you will. So we're going to micromanage Albin's ERS here a little bit. And what I mean by this is that we're not going to recharge on the straights. We're going to recharge at the end of the straights and in the corner section. So we're going to go a little bit harvesting here now. And we might lose the gap to the car in front doing this. So we'll tune it down for now. And hopefully we can get within DRS now on the main straight. If we can't, we're going to have to use energy to make up for that. And that is also going to make an overtake a little bit more difficult. So we might have actually lowered our dirty air tolerance here a little bit lower than I would have liked. But even then, we're still in, as I said, a very, very promising position. Sergeant 2 should be able to potentially catch up to the Mercs here. Then we can start causing some mayhem. For Bono here, we might not actually have much of a choice other than to just deploy the ERS. We kind of need Sainz to overtake Paris and slow him down, because they are DRS training away from us. Albon is quick enough, though, that he is kind of pulling away from Alonso on the regular. So, we're going to give Albon here a little bit of usage of his ERS energy to get within DRS of the car in front. Hopefully we can stay here, and we might try and run a little bit of a top up here, which has less of an impact of race times, but it takes longer to recharge, which isn't good here. But let's face it, we don't really have any chances of catching Verstappen and Leclerc at this moment. So our fight right now is going to be with Sainz and Perez. That's going to be the goal. Alonso is also going to be coming up from behind, potentially, be another one that could end up being in this fight. But for now, we'll just run top up, and I think actually we'll tune it to neutral now because Albon managed to overtake Perez into the corner, which is very, very good. Sergeant here might need a little bit of a help here to get things done. We've had a crash here, which again is not that surprising. In this case, it is De Vries. That's just a light touch though, so he should be fine. And he is. So he is basically back in... Oh, never mind. We have a Ferrari crashing out here. Sainz. Did he take... Luckily, they did not take Albon with him, but I'm wondering if they did something to static crashes it, because that was a pretty aggressive turn away from Perez. I'm wondering if that is a, something that they fixed, which would be surprising. They didn't actually mention it in the patch notes. But I believe this now means that we're going to have a drag race, basically till the end. So we are going to sacrifice another fresh set of softs here. We kind of have to, the others are going to do the same. For the race itself, we're just going to have to live with one set of softs and then do most of the work on mediums, I think. Which should be fine, honestly. And for Sargent, he's going to have a bit of an easy time during the race, but even so, we are going to have to go on to, onto a new set of softs here. There's just no way around it. This does also give us a chance to get us the sprint win. And it's not necessarily a positive thing from Sargent's point of view in particular. Not ours either, because it's just 4 laps now. It's going to be, as I said, a drag race. And drag races don't really favor us too much. Now, we could put Albon's aggression here too high, just have him take a little bit more risk. But I think we're going to go for the win in the race itself instead. Good start here from both our boys though, we'll take that. Sergeant gets a bit of a move down there, someone fell down the order, I didn't see who. But yeah, good restart. Sergeant is also already attacking Hamilton, so... yeah, we are definitely quicker than the Mercs at this point. I am going to be tuning down the energy usage at this point, or honestly, we're going to keep it up for Albin, and we're going to put him on high aggression, rarely defend. Because he seems to be, potentially here, well, he was at one point, ready to attack the cars in front. So he is getting there. We also already have gotten the gap down with Paris. So with as few laps as we have, we are just going to go full send here and hope for the best. For Albin, it might still be a little bit too little, but we'll see. The main worry here is going to be running out of ERS though, for our boys. And as I said, we're going to be slow on the straights. We are going to need these two to pull some sort of shenanigans in order to get an overtake done. Potentially this is a good chance. Like, we're not in the best part of the track to pull off overtakes, but our cornering ability does allow us to, if we say give Albin everything that we have, to pull some weird challenges here in this section. Well, this upcoming section, more like it. But even then, it's not going to be great. And we are going to put him back to top up now. Sargent, he is ahead of Hamilton, but he is getting left behind by Alonso. So for him, it's just basically defensive driving from here on out. And for Albin, we are still going to desperately try to get him into a position where he can challenge for a bit more here. But being third, second in the DRS train is not an optimal place to be, let's be honest, particularly not when the two cars in front are constantly fighting. Not leaving you much room, if any, like that. Albin there getting taken out.
And Logan.
But I think he ended up third because he got taken out. But that's not good. That means we have lost our suspension. We're going to need to emergency manufacture one. So yeah, I'm shocked that there's no penalties here though. Because again, he did get kind of taken out there. But no, nothing we can do with that. We'll just have to live with it, unfortunately. Make up for it during the race. And as I said, we did lose a chassis, a front wing, and the suspension. And we did actually make an extra one, so this did work out well for us. The gearbox though is kind of shafted. The engine is fine to run for now. But yeah, that was not a positive experience. We did end up at third and sixth though, so we can't really complain too hard. But of course, we would have liked to, you know, have those extra 3 laps. We could have launched an attack. It would have been much, much sweeter. Now, this track doesn't have high degradation. It also doesn't have, I believe, the longest of pit lanes. It is one that is actually fairly short. Don't lose too much time. In this case, 0 seconds. Is that because of the red flag? About 20 seconds here, as you can see. So you don't lose a lot of time pitting. It is one of the longest tracks around, with 1.140 or something like that, as 143 here, as you can see, as its lap record, and 51 laps. So we do get a fairly long race time. And with that, we do want to put up a strategy here that is, you know, excellent for that. We could go one of these. This one is quicker than this one. So we don't want this one already, we know, isn't actually viable. But what we can do is do something that is quite silly, particularly for Albin. And that is to do a double medium stint, like so. Now, where the sweet spot is going to be is kind of hard to say. But we could do something like this. It's going to be slightly quicker. Albin starts pretty high up to begin with. So what I'm thinking we're going to do is actually turn this around. And we'll do a final soft stint. And yeah, as you can see, this should work out just fine. From a times perspective. And the final soft stint there should be fairly quick. That is the idea. Could potentially do something like this. Stretch out that first medium stint a little bit, and it'll still be quick. Now, if we put in a hard stint in here, it's going to be slower, just as a rule of thumb, because, well, the mediums are quicker here. So the best strategy that we can actually do here is medium, medium, soft. It also means that we don't have to worry about, for both our drivers, that would be their smoothness, because as you can see, we have a lot of smoothness to go on. Because we are going for a two-stopper, if we have a safety car, it's not going to hurt us very much at all, because we can just adjust the strategy accordingly. So we're going to start on the mediums. We're going to go for a full attack strategy here, and we'll see if we can make something out of this race starting 3rd and 6th. Keep in mind, though, that the confidence here is a bit of a problem. We need to try and get that up during this race as quickly as possible to, you know, have a bit of a better chance.
Here we go with the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Good start from us. Doesn't look like the best start from Verstappen here, but he is coming back at us. And as you can see, Verstappen 2 is on medium tyres. There's just 2 people ahead of us on softs. There are used softs too, so they will not be super good. But if we can get ahead of Verstappen here immediately, which we have, that is actually going to help us out a ton in terms of getting a potential race win out of this race. Now, once we actually end up in the lead, which I believe that we will, we have 2 choices ahead of us. It's either trying to push as hard as we can and get away from them, or basically use them as a pulley. Now, our car is reasonably quick unless it's going in a straight line. So I think what we're going to do here is try and pull away from them as quickly as possible. It's going to be a little bit of a, you know, going to take a little bit of work, but I think it's going to be worth it. Sargent folds down the grid a little bit. It's not actually a concern of ours, but Leclerc getting away from us actually kind of is, because Leclerc is running a soft compound. So if we could, we'd really like to have the DRS from him, while, you know, not being challenged by Verstappen and Perez from behind. So it's a bit of a, you know, lose-lose there. Verstappen did overtake us, so he'll probably help us recatch Leclerc. But again, the reason why we're starting on mediums, which is to slow it high, is so that we can have more race pace towards the end of the race, so we can go a little bit longer on these tires and get the gaps that we need to have a fairly safe pit stop. Now, Verstappen overtaking us isn't actually the end of the world. It can actually help us out quite significantly here, because it will allow for him to tow us. Russell has actually had an incident, and I believe we're close to him, so let's see what happened. I didn't actually see what happened there. Did he scrape the wall lightly? It might have looked like he's gently scraped the wall there, which honestly could have been, you know, me just missing things. But currently we are in a pretty stable position here. We'll be running with Verstappen to try and catch Leclerc, and hopefully we can, later on in this race, get the gaps that we need to pit safely for one, but also get away from the potentially quicker cars due to their drivers being better than us. As you can see, we've already caught Leclerc, and more importantly, we've actually already outrun him. So right now we have a 5-second lead on Verstappen. Sargent is running still in 6th. He's kind of fighting with Alonso, as you can see, going a little bit backwards and forwards. Again, Sargent's stats shouldn't actually allow him to be up here and fight, even if he might have just put Alonso in the wall by the looks of things. So this virtual safety car is one that we're going to take advantage of. We are going to be pitting under this virtual safety car for sure. I assume both Leclerc and Perez are going to do the same. The reason why we want to take advantage is that even though we aren't close to our pit window, we have a lot of flexibility. And by, say, changing this strategy so that we pit now, we can still change things around in a way that we don't lose too much time. And as you can see, this works out just fine as well. It's 3 seconds slower, but I'm pretty sure this thing doesn't actually take into account the VSC. So with the VSC here, I believe we will lose about 15 seconds versus 20. Let's have a look here. Time considerations. Yeah, so we save about 5 seconds. In theory, this should be about 2 seconds quicker. We can, of course, just stay out.
There's a yellow flag
But
now.
I think it would be better for us to just take advantage of this and pit. Particularly because if virtual safety car ends on a straight, you are going to lose a lot of time. You can lose a good 5 to 10 seconds if your VSC ends on a straight, so might as well just take advantage of this one, get in and pit, and you know, work from there. It's probably the best option that we have. To be fair, putting Sergeant on a soft tire here would probably have been better from a strategic view. And what I mean by this is we want to have one of each tire ready for any given situation, just to be, you know, able to more flexibly respond to it. We could put him on a soft, but again, I think it's better that we just stick with the strategy that we have. We know that it's going to work. Everyone else kind of just stays out. Albon comes out in 4th, Sergeant comes out in 9th, so Sergeant probably shouldn't have pitted him. But Albon here has a very good now window to work from. We'll have to see if we can actually make it up, but yeah, we're now 11 seconds behind. We were 5 seconds ahead before the VSC. We do need to get these tires up to temperature soon though, and we also do have a bit of fuel now that we can push. But by the time that these guys pit, we should be, you know, handily ahead of them again. So we'll do that. We'll try and work our way forwards. These tires have been used. They have been on track for about 15 laps. And if we look at the DEG here, or rather the expected DEG, 15 laps would be, you know, 1.5 seconds quicker. 15 laps here would be basically a second slower. Sorry, it was slower for the softs there too. So already we have a second a lap gain just by running the current tires. So running attack, pushing fuel, we'll see just now how quick these tires are in comparison to the rest. And as you can see, they're actually pushing. We are running the same everything. So I would assume that they're trying to put heat into their tires. It's the only thing that would really make sense to me, because we should be in the current stage more rapid than they are, and we're actually kind of, as you can see, slower. So a bit of a concern, but we are gaining, interestingly enough, so it's still okay. For Sergeant, his life is going to be a little bit harder because, again, needs to get overtakes done. Should have the arrestor to make that job a little bit easier, so I'm not too concerned about him either. We also have energy here that we can use, and that should also make his job a lot easier with that. And as you can see, Albon is catching up. It's just taking a little bit of time. Sergeant gets the move done, and he should be very close now back up to that 5th position. So for him, I'd say the pit stop worked. Of course, if they end up getting a free pit stop later on, it's not going to be a good strategy for us, but it's still up in the air. Stroll does pit now, so we'll see if the rest of the cars also end up pitting, particularly the soft runners. And we'll see where we're at once we get to our final pit stop. The first set of pit stops for most car here, with the exception of Verstappen, among the top 10, has actually been completed. And as you see here, Sargent is running 4th, he's running behind Leclerc. So still in a good position. I dare say Leclerc is probably going to stay on these mediums till the end. I'm curious about what Verstappen is doing, but it does seem like he's doing a one-stopper, medium to soft, which is a bit surprising. But as you can see, Albon has already overtaken him. We're good 3 seconds ahead. Sargent here, if he can just stay with Leclerc until we go for those softs, still does have a bit of an opportunity to, you know, get something out of this race. So it's looking very, very promising still for us. We are getting to the point now where we're going to do this final pit stop. Albon has about 12 seconds down to Leclerc. Potentially he's going to be safer of Verstappen too. We could actually have Sargent act as a bit of a blocker for this lap if we really, really want to. So we can put him to always defend just for this lap. Still doesn't have the best of driver confidence, even though it's running in 4th. Which is a bit confusing to me, but it is what it is. Albon is looking good. So we're going to put him on the softs here. And as you can see, they're expected to be 2 seconds quicker than the tires that we currently have. Now keep in mind that Leclerc and Perez tires are going to be a lot fresher. So they will not be that slow, but they will be slow enough. Sargent couldn't really pull anything off here, unfortunately, so it is what it is. Potentially, Verstappen might actually catch us on the pit exit. But even so, it shouldn't be a problem. There is a bunch of back markers he needs to get through. If he reaches them in a corner, he's not going to have a good time. For Sargent now, the goal is just to get out ahead of Sainz, because he has potentially a lot of free air here to you know, roam with too. So we're going to be deploying ERS just to try and make sure that we make that work. And Verstappen is going to overtake us here. Just no way that we make that work, unfortunately. Sargent, though, is looking much, much safer in terms of getting out into free air. So Albon here, gonna recharge his ERS a little bit while heating up the tires. And that should be enough that we will be just flying by both Verstappen and Perez once we actually catch up, because we are on soft tires. Verstappen's on old softs. Both of these are on old mediums. 13 laps to go. We should be down for, well, a potentially grandstand finish here. So we have recharged him a little bit. We're gonna let Albon go, let him try and chase them down. Sargent will be trying to do the same, but he is just a tad bit further back, let's put it like that. So he's not gonna have as easy of a job here. Perez should just be basically flown by here, no real contest. He might come back at us on the straight, but again, Albon should be tremendously quick here, and he is. We might not be able to snatch fastest lap here though, but honestly that's not a big concern. 46.3 here from Sargent. He might actually be able to catch Perez if he's really lucky, but looks like 5th is going to be the best he can do. Albon there pulls down at 1:45.2. So we are flying at this point, and he's feeling it too. Purple first sector. The other sectors aren't going to be purple because we're running behind other cars, let's be honest, but still good. Let's see now if we can get these overtakes done. Might go 3 wide into this first corner. Albon thinks better of it, which is good on him. And I think that we're going to deploy right now. Let's see if we can get Leclerc, because the longer we are stuck behind these guys, the worse it's going to be for us. Although we did sneak by Verstappen there, which is great. If we can get Leclerc and have him work as kind of a, you know, blocker here, that would actually be amazing. Because if we can pull out a DRS now from these guys, that should more or less cement Albon as a race winner here. Sargent is still catching up to Perez. Caught about 2 seconds last lap, 10 laps to go. So if Sargent keeps up this speed, he can potentially fight for a podium here. So
Get the pack under control.
This is looking very, very promising from Albon. Honestly, we'll take this for sure. Put him back to neutral. And we'll be focusing on Sargent and getting him into, as I said, potentially a winning seat here. At least try and catch Perez. We'll see how that adventure goes. We're on the final lap. Unfortunately, here, Sargent has been able to catch Perez. Perez has been helped a little bit by back markers. They've been blocking us and giving him DRS. So he's been able to pull away due to that. As a result, Sargent's had a couple of laps down in the 148s because he's been blocking, but reliably he's been doing 46 basically blanks, which should have been enough. But when Perez gets DRS, when we get blocked, it does change the dynamic a little bit, which puts us into a bad position. But Albon here, 17 seconds ahead of Leclerc. Sargent finishing the top 5, potentially again a podium contender here if it had gone a little bit better. So you can kind of imagine just why we were kind of salty about the changes to the designs, why we were so vehemently against it. I'm not saying this is impossible to pull off in 1.5 and how it was before 1.6. But it's much easier to pull off now, and you can do it way more reliably. Again, this is already a car that is potentially championship winning. Once we get the side pods, it's going to get even a bigger boost. We're going to have the best cornering ability of any team. We can start working a little bit more towards other things, put another CFD wind tunnel time into the safe front wing. Get the alpha sensitivity up, making it easy for our cars to follow and overtake. And we'll be once again seeing a lot better chances for us to, you know, win races. But this is probably we're going to end this first, this foray. As you can see, Sargent 5th and Albon 2nd. Sorry, not 2nd, 1st. I just saw the 2 numbers up then, instantly thought 2nd. But the fact that we can have both Williams drivers in the top 5 with a winner within 4 races with these sliders is probably a tad too much. Williams does have an amazingly good starting point though, so you probably won't be able to pull this off with the teams below. But let's face it, he has 17 seconds on Leclerc, 21 seconds on Verstappen. So we still have a very, very sizable advantage here to the point where, you know, we can't really complain or anything like that. So I really hope they revert to sliders. I would assume they're going to do that. That would actually be the best fix for it to now. Just revert it back to 1.5 until you find a better solution. I hope they do that. hopefully soon, hopefully tomorrow. Friday, the Starfield is coming out. So we'll have to see. Might be that we just end up doing a lot of race moments going forward, but if they revert that, I think we can jump back onto the other series, AT and of course Alfa Romeo. Now keep in mind also that I do want to say this, that it did seem that let me think, that it was possible, like they might have done something to the race engine where they don't run into static cars anymore. Because what I've seen while recording these 4 races or just getting this video done is that a lot of the cars actually take very drastic movements, let's be honest, to avoid crashing into static cars. But I'm honestly more fine with that than them crashing into a car that is static. It happens in racing. You do run into cars because you can't turn around quick enough, but it's very frustrating to see. So honestly, it's a decent fix if they've done that. What it seems like they've done, we have jumped up to, this is the DHL, that's not the interesting one. And we want to have a look at the other standings. But as you can see there, we did fail, apparently in qualifying position top 4. We qualified a little bit lower than that. So we do get hit with penalties here, but honestly, it's okay. We'll take them. I was a little bit too brave there, but Sargent, 74 overall, 5th at Baku. Albon, 81 overall, wins. So imagine if we had Verstappen, or one of the top drivers in the car. And that is kind of the issue here. If you add a top driver, we can, for instance, we can actually switch out Sargent with Alonso, for instance. We could also snatch Gasly, and then we have some already pretty good improvements to our lap times just from that. So that is also the reason why the sliders are such a concern, but we're going to end this here. It's probably going to be just a one-off this, but it's more of a exercise in showing why reverting to 22 sliders is going to be potentially very bad for the game. And honestly, I'm not a fan of setting your own boundaries, because to me, min-maxing is fun in its own right, but if min-maxing leads to you being extremely powerful, it makes the game boring. Min-maxing should lead you to getting slightly more powerful than everything around you, and basically feel like it has a reward. Getting powerful to the point where, this takes no effort to win, that's just boring. But that is my personal opinion. It's probably not the best opinion, let's be honest. I would really like to see a more in-depth game, but that is me personally. And I understand that people have other viewpoints, but this slider change is honestly, I think, bad for the game. Hopefully they'll revert it, or as change in the future, we'll see. But thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, hope to see you next time. Probably have a look at a race moment and maybe something else tomorrow, depending on what news we get from the developers. Frontier, bye bye.